Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel, and what a Thursday night it was. Where was that? In Detroit with the debate. Of course, yesterday we had, and unfortunately, it's Friday night now, and I have to talk about things that happened over 24 hours ago, just the way the format of this show goes. I'd like to change that sometime in the future, be able to get to some of this stuff in a quicker manner, but that's just the way things are done. Recording the show, when it plays, and everything that goes on in the world. Just the way it works out sometimes, unfortunately. However, I want you to know that I'm going to try to give you maybe some of the things that I think you've missed. I've been following the news, what everybody has covered regarding Romney's speech and the debate. And I maybe want to touch on a couple things that I think have been missed, and hopefully that will give you even more complete picture of what happened within the last 36, 48 hours. I'm going to try to do that for you because with yesterday's show got recorded before some of those things happened. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com, and you can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. Let's go to the Romney speech first, and then we'll get to the debate. And then I want to touch upon a few other things that are kind of ancillary to the debate. Just touch on the debate and the state of conservatism after, what we saw there. As far as Mitt Romney goes, I'm not going to argue with people who say that he was the wrong guy to go out. And, he went out there and called Trump a con man. And he got a lot of criticism for that because of, in 2012, Trump supported Mitt Romney. Trump got behind Mitt Romney and his campaign, and now it looks like these years later that Mitt Romney is stabbing Donald Trump in the back. And you can see that out there from the Trump people saying, look at Mitt Romney, look what he's doing, and who's the guy that's the flip-flopper now, and all of that. And if it were me, I would have put that in the speech that Romney gave, saying what he did about Donald Trump. I would say, you know what, he supported me in 2012, and you know what, he fooled me too. And I think doing that, just a couple sentences along those lines would have done a lot to, stop the criticism that now Mitt Romney's getting. I mean, he was going to get criticism no matter what. But you have to admit that it's a little weird that the guy's going to come out and criticize somebody who supported him 4 years ago, 3 years ago, however long it was. So there's that. But in the bigger picture, this, at different places, the places that I go, Red State, Hot Air, National Review, Free Beacon, the common idea is Mitt Romney, good guy, but he is not the guy to deliver the message that was given yesterday. Because he's not conservative, because there were a lot of the people from the base who didn't like him in 2012, a lot of people who are now Trump supporters. He's just the wrong guy. Good guy, moral guy, not conservative, didn't run the best of campaigns, didn't want to talk about Benghazi. And to all of that, I say, once again, those people, what they're saying is right. Okay? But here's the problem. As I've told you, to me, what I said yesterday is it just seems like Mitt Romney feels like he has to be the adult in the room. Somebody who is outside the campaigns. somebody who is not running this year, wasn't, it's not like Rick Perry coming out who was in the race and then dropped out. Mitt Romney is not that. He never did officially run, no matter how many people wanted him to. Now there's the rumors that he might get into the brokered convention antics. Somebody that everybody could be happy with if it comes to a brokered convention this summer. But right now, he's not filled out any paperwork. He's just a guy in private industry, sees what's going on, and felt like he had to say something. And you know what? That's showing more courage than anybody else has shown within conservative, somewhat Republican circles. So those people, they can criticize all they want. They can say that Mitt Romney's not conservative and Romney care and everything else, but at least he saw a problem and was willing to put his name on a solution to it. And wasn't afraid to go out there. Now, a lot of people think, well, it's just political. It's grandstanding. You can look at it for what you want. And I guess it comes back to how you view Mitt Romney. But what I know is there weren't any true conservatives within our American political system that were willing to go out and do what Mitt Romney did. And try to remind everybody of what we're doing here. Nobody else did. Instead, what do we get? We get people who have been leaders as conservatives for years, who play patty cake with Donald Trump and his supporters. If not just outright supporting Donald Trump and making fun of the other candidates. People who have called themselves conservatives for years. So what are you going to do? You know what this reminds me of? I was thinking, is there something good, a good analogy to this? And for some reason, you know what popped into my head? I know this is really, really strange, but it's a popular movie, and I know a lot of people have seen it, and it's The Killing Fields. Remember about the Vietnamese guy who escapes Vietnamese into Cambodia, Laos, trying to get away from the Khmer Rouge, and what was going on then is Vietnam was taken over, and Sam Waterston played that New York Times reporter. It's a true story. Remember that? Remember that movie? And there was a scene where the Vietnamese guy, he had made it to some Khmer Rouge encampment, and he was kind of taking care of this guy's son. Remember that? And then, of course, eventually the Vietnamese guy takes the son with him as he tries to escape. Well, there's that older Khmer Rouge guy. And, they're in the black with those red scarves. And he sees the younger Khmer Rouge, members, guys, doing unspeakable things. And you can see it in his face, the actor's face, the person's face, that he doesn't want to have to go out there and tell these people they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. But he thinks because he's in the position he's in, he has to anyway. Knowing that there are probably going to be problems, but he feels that this is what he needs to do. He goes out there, and within seconds, he's shot. For some reason, when I think about Mitt Romney and what went on yesterday, I think of that. Somebody needed to do something. Somebody needed to have the conscience, even though this guy in the movie his hands weren't clean either. I mean, the whole Khmer Rouge political group, terrorist group, whatever you want to call them, they were all crooked and terrorists and horrible, killing thousands, if not millions of people. But here was a guy with a conscience, once again, probably a guy that had done some bad things in his life, but he just said, you know what, maybe this has gone too far. He goes out there, gets himself shot. Didn't have to do it, did it anyway, died. This is what I thought of Mitt Romney yesterday. His hands are not clean regarding the current state of our country, the current state of the Republican Party. His hands are not clean. But he figured, I'm going to go out there and do this anyway. And it's, once again, more than anybody else has been, with his stature, has been willing to do. And let's get to that point. I mean, what we're really seeing. Now, I should say that Ben Sasse, once again, don't know how to pronounce his last name, has, within the last couple weeks, have done that. But, you know, he's still, I'm not going to say a nobody. People in Nebraska know who he is. He got elected there. But does a conservative in Idaho know who Senator Sasse is? Probably not. He doesn't have history. How many battles has he been in the Senate so far? Not too many. Seems like a good conservative. Seems like a good guy. But he's not nationally known. Now, maybe in a few years he will be. Now, he's come out and said some things, but nobody with true conservative political credentials, you know, an elder statesman, you know, Ronald Reagan, he's gone. Even if he were alive today, he'd be 112. 112? No, he was born, no, he'd be 105 years old. So I don't think he'd be getting out there, even in his right mind, and saying something, even if he were alive. And that's what we're really talking about, is that as much as we have controlled the radio waves with conservatism, as many websites that we have that are popular, that millions of people go to every day, we do not have somebody who can get out there and do that. Rush Limbaugh can't do that anymore because he's been tainted by Trump. Ann Coulter, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, all these people have led conservatives who would be perfect for coming out and doing something like Mitt Romney did yesterday. They can't do it. They're too worried about their listeners, and I'm going to get to that later in this show. They're too worried, as if, you know, I know that's a topic that's been covered a lot on the show. Yes, I can actually cover more new material on that, if you can believe it. But they've tainted themselves. I mean, I could do it on the show. Other people can do it on Red State Talk Radio, even though I know a lot of them love Trump. But those ones who don't, they could come out and say something. But you know what? We're just not, you know, it'd be like, well, why are we listening to this guy? Why are we listening to this woman? So if there's anything, it's that this generation of conservatives, we have just not fostered a good spokesperson. Nobody, it seems all of our people who would have been able to be picked maybe 10 years ago, they've all dirtied themselves in this. All of them. One of them could have come out, if this was 10 years ago, if they'd have been able to keep their noses clean and stay out of the traps that Trump set for all of them, and I think there is partially that going on. They could have come out and did what Mitt Romney did, and this would be over. It would be over. But we don't have anybody like that. Who do we have? We have Mitt Romney. That's the best we can get now. Whose fault's that? It's our fault. The best we can do, Bob Dole. Whose fault's that? Our fault. And when I say our, I mean collectively, including Rush Limbaugh, all the, because he's in the end, he's not a politician. He's just a person doing a particular job. But he put himself in that position. He chooses to show up every day, as does Ann Coulter, Laura Ingraham, and all of them. And every time they show up now these days, they dirty the conservative brand. So what do we have? We have Bob Dole. We have George W. Bush. That's the best we can do now. Maybe we have somebody like Glenn Beck, but he's a kook. As much as I like him liking Ted Cruz and despising Donald Trump, I don't like Glenn Beck. I think, once again, I think he's a kook. I think he's a drama queen. Now, we could maybe get into the more intellectual side of this. Maybe you could look at a Thomas Sowell, who everybody should respect. The problem is, nobody knows who the heck he is. He's written a ton of books. Has made, I think, probably a decent amount of money pushing forward conservatism, free market attitudes, free trade, laissez-faire, capitalism, freedom around the world. But he's like a professor. Of course, a month ago, we had National Review. And as much as I like some points of National Review, the point is their hands aren't clean in this either. They supported Mitt Romney way early in 2012. They've been wishy-washy on some things over the years. Nobody is, there's just nobody who is clean. Right? And so Mitt Romney looked around and says, you know what? Doesn't look like there's anybody, he probably listens to Rush Limbaugh. He knows Sean Hannity. He knows all of these people. Ann Coulter was a huge fan of his in 2012. Mitt Romney sees what they're saying. And you know what he probably was saying to his wife at night? I can't believe these people are doing that. So even though he probably knows how the public views him, he felt, you know what? I have to go out and do something. And all he does, what does he get? All he does is get criticism from people who don't have the courage to do it. Once again, I can say a lot of bad things about Mitt Romney. All right? I can. Politically. And I've done it. When I was doing this show on my own, I had a lot of bad things to say about Mitt Romney, but never his character. And since then, criticized him for how he ran his campaign and everything. But I think down deep, I think he's a good guy. I do. And there could be, and dare I say this, there could be a part of Mitt Romney when he got out there yesterday and was thinking, you know what? I may be a little to blame for this as well. I'm sure he looks back at his 2012 campaign and says, there were some mistakes that I made. I'm not saying he got more conservative since then. But he's probably saying, if I would have done this a little different, that a little different, I might have wanted 2012. And we wouldn't be in this situation that we're in now. Maybe he's feeling a little guilty too. So I just don't understand. Once again, I agree. Not the greatest messenger for the message delivered. But who else are you going to pick? Who else are you going to pick? I guess it comes back to, should it have been done in the first place? To which I say yes. It should have been done months ago. By several different people. Once again, though, we're running out of icons. We're running out of people, and you can see it. Maybe I know all of you out there don't go to all the websites that I do. You don't have the time. I do this show. Research is allowed for this show. So I do, and I see it. I see this crack up happening. I've told you the two different camps that are out there. The anti-Trump camp and the pro-Trump camp. And a year ago, all of these sites and people were pretty much in lockstep together. Not anymore. Over one candidate. Over one candidate. And what the perception is of the Republican Party. And what has been going on. I can tell you that this is maybe what I'm revealing in in this talk is something that that I hold very dear in my personal life and in my life outside of politics, how I handle my everyday things. I do not criticize people for jobs that I don't want to do. If I don't have the courage or the desire to do certain things, to a job, relationships, or something like that, then I just don't criticize it. I just don't. So it seems, though, that other people are different. It's very easy for us these days to judge everybody because everybody's so out there. It seems there are no secrets anymore. Instead, everybody wants to reveal all of their secrets. Now, you want to judge somebody on their morality or something, I get that. But what they choose to do, and something like Mitt Romney, showing some courage, getting out there, I'm not going to criticize him. I mean, I appreciate his work. I think that if I was in a higher profile position and I had millions of listeners, maybe I could have been able to put together a news conference and done it. But frankly, I don't have the Q rating that Mitt Romney does. But I see too many people criticizing him. They don't have the courage to do it themselves. I think they know that it needs to be done, maybe down deep, but they don't want to do it. Getting back to the talk radio example and all the people at Fox News and elsewhere, you know why they don't want to tick off some of their viewers. They're afraid of losing advertising dollars. That's why. Because it surely, what Donald Trump has been dishing out the last 6 months is not conservatism and is not in line with anything that these people have thought they're doing their shows on TV, radio, and all their writings for the last 20 years. It's surely not in line with that. So, there's that. There's the Mitt Romney speech yesterday. I told you that if I was Mitt Romney and I had his history, what I would have done. I can live with the speech, but I would have tried to get together with the campaigns. I know that's probably would have been rejected. You just never know, but try to have everybody, except for Donald Trump, have a sit down. What are we doing here? What are we doing? And in fact, there was a very interesting article, and unfortunately I did not print it out. I don't even think I bookmarked it on my computer, but there was, maybe it might have been at National Review, the idea, the hypothesis, the theory, that the reason that Donald Trump ran this year on the Republican side is because he thought it would be easier. He wanted to run for president, and he thought it would be easier to win on the Republican side than the Democrat side. That's why he went with the Republicans. Once again, it's part of a longer discussion. That's just a couple sentences of it. It was very interesting. Because up until a year ago, his ideas about the United States were much more in line with the Democrats. But why didn't he run? Might have looked at Hillary Clinton and says, you know what? We're friends. I've given her a lot of money. I don't know if I can win on that side. Seems that she doesn't have a lot of competition. She's just going to roll right through it. He might have made a miscalculation on his part now that we see what Bernie Sanders has done. So he looked at the Republicans, saw how split up it was going to be. He found his issue, immigration, that I don't even think he believes in, and he went with it. Very interesting insight regarding all of that. Now that I've talked about Mitt Romney, let's move on to something else. And once again, I'm going to skip the debate. And I'm going to go to a Charles C.W. Cook article from earlier this week, I believe it was. It was definitely this week, but it might have been Monday or Tuesday. And the simple idea behind it is, what if the people are wrong? You know, there's something about representative government that fascinates me in particular. I don't know how much it fascinates everybody else out there, this idea. But just from being a politician, getting elected to office, and you could even go to people who are in private business of politics, like TV show hosts and radio hosts and people who write politics. What is the role of a politician in relationship to his constituents? Is he or she supposed to do what his constituents want, or is he supposed to bring his own, he or she is that congressperson supposed to bring his or her own ideas to the office and then convince the constituents that they're wrong? Remember, in our form of government, and I think we forget about this, we are actually our own leaders. We are, and it's hard, I know it's hard to see that today, but we are not subjects. We are people. And those people in Washington work for us. They are the employees. We are the employers, if you want to look at it that way. I know it's hard to see that given the current state of affairs, and this has been going on. This isn't new. This is probably going on 50, 60, 70 years that it's been like this. And I think the reason this has happened is because of big government, just huge government, out of control government. But Charles C.W. Cook asks a very simple question. What if the people are wrong? What is the role of a representative, a senator, the president, if they think one thing, knowing what they know about whatever the topic may be, the data that they get, but the American citizens insist that something should be exactly the opposite? Now, in Charles C.W. Cook's case, he brings up the topic of trade, which is a spectacular choice on his part. All right? In that, the truth is that a lot of people on both sides of the aisle think that, and this is the reason that I think Donald Trump gets away with this tariff line, 45% tariff, 35% tariff, is because a majority of the American people think that the United States is getting ripped off by Mexico, China, and other countries, taking advantage of trade to their expense, to our detriment. However, every study, every economist who would call himself a free market economist, Austrian economist, heck, there might even be some Keynesians that come along with us, know that free trade between countries works. Trade between countries works. Tariffs between countries do not work. It hurts everybody. However, the people, it seems, a majority of them, want barriers for goods coming into the United States. And there are others who don't. But there are a bunch of politicians who may be conservative who think we should have freer trade and do what we can to work with other countries and not putting up barriers between our countries. But their constituents think something else. What is a politician supposed to do in those circumstances? Now, I'll tell you, as Charles C.W. Cook will tell you in this article, most politicians, and this is kind of why we get into lying in politics, politicians will tell their constituents one thing and then go to Washington and do something else. Why? They just don't want to take the time to tell their constituents that their constituents are wrong. All right, and I want to continue to talk about this after the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
You're listening to Red State Talk Radio, America's premier conservative talk radio network.
You critics don't define our honor. You try to shame us for doing our job. You teach children to fear us, crowds to attack us, and good people to doubt us. But we will never back down from our sworn duty to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. We wake up every day, put on our badge, strap a gun to our hips, kiss our families goodbye, and put our lives between the law-abiding and any criminal who threatens their rights. We serve people of every color and creed, men, women, and children in violent, dangerous neighborhoods, because they have the same right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as CEOs, movie stars, and the political elite. We are Americans, and we are the American police officer. We stand with the National Rifle Association of America, and the NRA stands with us. Together, we're freedom's safest place.
I know. We Christians are just as bad as Muslims who fly planes into buildings and video themselves sawing people's heads off and beheading kids and mutilating women and shooting people who draw cartoons. That's right. You better be just as wary of us Christians, because we don't mess around. Don't be insulting our Jesus, because you think Muslims are bad. Oh, man, don't push us. You think the Muslims are bad when they prey on people for insulting Muhammad? You're really going to get it when Christians pray for you for insulting Jesus.
It could be easy to take what we have for granted and not appreciate everything the men and women of law enforcement do for us every day. So to all my heroes out there, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for protecting my family,
my business,
my kids,
our community.
Thank you for listening to us,
for being there for me, for keeping me safe.
To all those in law enforcement, thank you.
This is Primo Mondoni, host of the Red State Town Hall. Join me Sundays at 11 p.m. Eastern on Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. So, lock it in and rip the knob off.
This is Paul Preston, host of Agenda 21 Radio. Join me Monday through Friday on Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. So lock it in and rip the knob off.
And we're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Thank you for listening tonight. I want to get back to this article by Charles C.W. Cook at National Review. .com, the online edition of National Review, a site that I go to quite often. And he was pointing out, talking about this topic of what if the people are wrong? What if, I would say, and this goes back to where I think we have gone wrong as conservatives. And I know that I'm going to sound a little elitist here. But we're going to have to admit something if we want conservatism to get better in the United States. The truth is, a lot of times people are wrong. They just are. Now, I know we are the bosses. I'm a regular citizen like the rest of you. And I know that in our form of government, we are wrong. I mean, we in our form of government, we are the leaders, but we are not omnipotent. And although we have a representative form of government, I'm not sure that means that every representative, every senator, every president is supposed to do what we think. And once again, it gets back to, well, how do you pick out those decisions? Yeah, I know it's tough. And this is why this particular topic fascinates me so much. See, because I think that for the most part, you ask your average citizen, what's a representative, a senator supposed to do? And they're going to say, well, he's supposed to do, or she's supposed to do. I'm trying to be politically correct here. My senator is supposed to do what I think. The senator got elected on certain principles. A majority of the people elected that senator. And so that senator is supposed to do what the majority thinks. Thing is, I would then say, even to the majority's detriment. We are all certainly motivated, not just in politics, but in our private lives, by our own self-interest. And, hey, we know a lot of our interests get us into a lot of trouble. Just because we want something doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it's right. But I think we as conservatives, we've gotten into this situation. Well, that's what the people want. The people want this. The people want that. And you know what? Sometimes the people are wrong. But you don't hear that. You know why you don't hear that? Because, truthfully, I think a lot of, and this goes back to why we don't have any conservative leaders now that can come out and do what Mitt Romney did yesterday. You know what? We just have a lot of conservative leaders who have been pandering to conservative leaders who have been pandering to conservatives for years now. And a lot of that pandering was not coming from politicians. All right. And I think that's what's different about my show compared to most of the others out there. I do not pander to you. If I think you guys are wrong on something, I'm going to tell you. Now, we can disagree. We can argue. We can agree on 80% of stuff and then disagree with the 20% of stuff. But I'm not going to say things that you like just so you keep tuning in every day. All right? I can't live with that. Obviously, a lot of other people can. I can't live with that. That is not the way my conscience works. And in fact, I would have to say that goes back to probably how I was raised. Probably from my parents, who I love very much, but being an entertainer, playing the piano when I was a kid, playing baseball, being in drama club in high school and having some starring parts and everything else. You know what? If my parents thought I sucked, guess what they told me? You know what, Ed? That kind of sucked. But I always knew if I did well, then you know what? They'd say, you know what, Ed? You really kicked butt there. And so probably a lot of this that I'm telling you about is environmental. I'm not so sure that it's genetic, my attitude about this, but it is at least certainly environmental. And I'm not going to pander to you. And the word pander comes up in this article from Charles C.W. Cook. The truth is that regarding all of this, including Donald Trump, is we've convinced regular people out here that whatever they want, they deserve. And whatever they want is right. And somebody who really, really falls into that is somebody like Donald Trump, who will tell you anything that you want to hear. And it could be that the reason that all these conservative leaders have jumped on the bandwagon of Donald Trump is because they saw how he's talking and said, you know what, I've been doing that for years. I've been pandering to my audience for years. I can't say anything bad about my conservative members in my audience because I'm afraid I'm going to lose listenership. I don't care what it's going to do to the conservative movement. I just want to keep my listenership, so I just got to keep saying what they like. And then Donald Trump comes along and says, you know what? Boy, that sure does sound similar to me, so I'm going to jump on his bandwagon too. And guess what? I'm going to get more listeners because of it. Now, we know that Donald Trump is not the first person to come along and flip-flop on issues. All right? That's not unusual. And I've told you, I think part of the reason is I do think a lot of people running for office eventually figure out, you know, in a lot of ways, these people are nuts. But that's not, now it could be construed as elitism, and sometimes it is, but you know what? Sometimes these politicians and people who are representing us in Washington, D.C., sometimes they're right. And this is the exact reason, going back way back to the John Boehner days, and I guess the Mitch McConnell days that still exist, that I don't give them as hard a time as other conservatives do. Because they have to wrestle with this every day. The truth is, if we went by what a majority of the American people want on any particular topic, we would have 50% tariffs. Our minimum wage would be $15, $18 an hour. We'd have an unemployment rate of 10%, if not higher. Right? You'd have inflation and everything else. I don't mean that people are stupid. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that people just want what they want. They want to make more money, so what's the easier way to do that? Minimum wage increase. They're afraid of their job going overseas. We've got to put tariffs up. Over and over and over, not understanding that all of these things just makes everything worse, including their own lives. And we used to have people who could talk about this. Can't do that now. Can't do it now. Everybody's too damn worried about their listenership and everything else. And then all of these leaders in conservatism have dirtied themselves now by getting caught up in the Donald Trump phenomenon. And that's why yesterday that you have then a guy who definitely has a lot of issues. I mean, not issues personally, but public issues, public perception issues, that the best we can do is Mitt Romney coming out and giving that speech yesterday. It all is combined to me. The truth is that we're now finding out that all of that conservative media that we have enjoyed for decades has really created a psychosis on our side where we always believe people are right. All right? I'm seeing that now. I'm seeing that. And it's been a little too kissy-kissy between leadership. I mean, you got to keep in mind something. Just outside of politics. What you get taught if you go to any sort of leadership classes about business, for people who are going to be in higher management and having 20, 30, 40, 50, however many people under them, responsible for them, hiring them or whatever. Obviously, that supervisor, that leader is supposed to get along with his employees and her employees, but he's not supposed to be friends with them. Because there may be a time when truth needs, you need to tell one of these people, you know what, John, you're not getting the job done. Susan, that wasn't the right thing to do. You're wrong. And in fact, that supervisor may have to tell a majority of his employees that what they're doing is wrong. And I think what has happened in conservatism is that the line over the years has become blurred between leadership and your regular people. Because I think that I now see that there needs to be a fine line that if we're going to keep this momentum, if we're going to keep this movement true to the founders of it, then a lot of people who think there's the regular people who don't study this, they just get up every day and go to work. Maybe they tune into the news once a week. They're busy. I get it. I'm not saying they're blowing it off. But they just don't have the time. That the people who do have the time, who do study this every day, who do the research, read the books, read the theory, then have to be able to tell their listeners, you know what, guys? I know you think you're conservative. You're not. You have to have the courage to do that. If you don't, what has happened in 2015 into 2016 can happen. And him picking out Charles C.W. Cook picking out the issue trade is an excellent one, because there is a distinct difference of philosophy between your average person who, for the most part, hasn't taken an economics course. Maybe, once again, I don't think these people are stupid. I don't. It's just that there are certain things in life that are counterintuitive. But to understand that they're counterintuitive, you have to understand the topic. You have to understand it if you're willing to have an open mind about it. Now, there are people who don't want to have an open mind about it. In fact, they see tariffs as a way of benefiting themselves and nobody else. Whereas I think most people think, well, if we were to put tariffs up in the United States, raise the percentages, everybody would benefit, when it's counterintuitive. Actually, everybody would suffer. But you have to get into the details of that, and you have to do some reading and studying to do that. However, I think what's been going on is pandering. We've been pandered by conservative politicians. We've been pandered to by conservative media leaders, conservative writers. So it's a fascinating, but once again, it gets back to that whole representative government idea. We elect our own leaders, but are we supposed to follow what they say sometimes, or are they supposed to do everything that we think, being that we're supposed to be the boss? It's a fascinating topic. And I think, once again, I think that's part of where conservatism has gone wrong. Too much kissy-kissy going on. Too much. Too much giving people a pass. When you have a microphone and you have tens of millions of people listening or watching, and you're afraid to say something that might tick a lot of them off. And then not just say it once, but to continue to say it. When you are taking the conservative position and those people aren't taking the conservative position. That takes courage. And that is something we don't have on the conservative side right now. That is what I like so much about Ted Cruz and what he did in Iowa. Saying, yeah, we're going to phase the Iowa corn subsidy out. We're just going to do that. I want to do that. That takes courage. I know it's just something small. But being that he is the first politician ever, maybe, that has taken part in that caucus and done that, shows you how much pandering has gone on. And that's just one little topic of corn subsidies, which does not break the bank. It's bad, it's wrong, but it's not going to put our deficits back in order. But that so many people have gone through that state and don't even want to criticize that shows you what I'm talking about. Iowa people want it. Everybody else suffers for it. So conservative leaders go in there and kiss those people's butts. Ted Cruz didn't do that. Gets a lot of respect for that in my book. Let's move on to the debate. You've already read probably or listened to everything that needs to be said about it. What's interesting to me, I'll have you know that I did not watch it. I followed the Twitter feed of National Review while I was working out last night and listening to Iron Maiden. I'm just going to be honest with you. Okay? I'm not going to pretend like I watched it. Don't want to watch it. I've watched a few of them, and like I said, the last time when I missed one, it got pretty good. Sounds like this one was pretty good as well, but I knew that I wasn't going to be doing this show until over 24 hours after the debate was over. I don't want to go over old ground, except this. It seems to me that behind the scenes, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, their people have come to some kind of agreement. I don't know when it happened. I don't know if they did it face-to-face, over the phone, Skyped it, if the candidates didn't have anything to do with it. It was just, they're close people getting together. I don't know. But I don't think it's a coincidence or some sort of weird low percentage luck or something, that in the debate last night, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz didn't attack each other. And I wouldn't say, as far as I saw and what people were saying, I wouldn't necessarily say that they agreed on everything, but they did not attack each other. In fact, it was a little bit like it was a kind of tag team, almost. I mean, that exchange between them about, hey, Donald, breathe, and then Rubio jumps in with the yoga remark, and the flexibility remark. That's almost like a pre-planned comedy routine or something. Now, I'm not saying that happened. I mean, I'm sure that wasn't the case. But I think it shows that somewhere within the last week, 10 days, 2 weeks, somebody has convinced them of what can happen here. Now, what this all means, they're not going anywhere. They're not dropping out. They're not going to get to the point where one's going to endorse the other, drop out, take the vice president slot. We're not to that point yet. But it was nice to see that happened. Like I said, didn't watch it, didn't listen to it, followed the Twitter feed from National Review while listening to Iron Maiden and working out. But that comment was made on the Twitter feed a few times last night during the debate. And it's nice to see. I know you all have problems with Marco Rubio. I know some of you have problems with Ted Cruz. Maybe you don't even like this kind of collusion, you would say, between two candidates like that. And by the way, John Kasich seems like he's going to be totally in the tank for Donald Trump when he drops out eventually. He's running last in Michigan, by the way. But it shows me that somewhere within the Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz campaigns, there's a kind of sensibility, some sensibility. Because they did a nice job on Donald Trump. And this is something that should have been done starting last summer. And now we're getting to the nitty-gritty. I'm glad they woke up. Just hope it's not too late. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing I noted. And just as a general comment, people talk. I could go on and on about this. Unfortunately, I'm going to run out of time. People complaining about the tone of the last couple debates. To which I say, I don't know what you could do. You have one particular candidate that communicates in a particular way. I know you want to keep it civil. He doesn't want to keep it civil. He doesn't. I mean, the only way he wants to keep it civil is if he never gets criticized. And once you criticize him, it goes automatically into the gutter. I don't know what to tell you. And there are many people who like that, and they're voting for Donald Trump. I don't know what to tell you. It's just the way it is. It may be, is it unpresidential? I don't know. I'm sure the way they talked in 1850 in debates was different than the way they talked in 1950, and it'll be different than the way they talked in 2050. But the reason it is that way is because of one particular candidate. And I can assure you Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio would not be like that if it weren't for Donald Trump. That's the only way you can talk to that guy. That's the only way you can make him look bad. So you got to do it. But I got to go. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Dentzel Domain is my Twitter feed. EdwardDentzel.com is where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find the Podbean, Podomatic, SoundCloud, YouTube. EdwardDentzel.com/book is where you can download for free the first chapter of my next novel, The Comebacks. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. Have a nice weekend. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.